Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Second Opinion Loan Officer podcast. And I'm really excited today because I have as a special guest probably the GOAT of second opinions on the internet, and maybe even the GOAT of first opinions. Today, I am bringing on a friend of mine and YouTube rock star, I guess, or Rainmaker, Mr. Kyle Seagraves. Kyle, let me get you in there. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you for that's a generous introduction.
Yeah. Listen. I could seriously do a 10-minute just falling all over like your accomplishments, and that's kind of a little bit about what I want to talk about today. And we're not going to use slides, but I do want to show this. Um, Anybody that knows about you and because you've been so successful at your YouTube channel, you've got a lot of subscribers and you get a lot of traffic. And I think originators, we're like, oh man, I want to be a rainmaker like Kyle. I want to have, where are we now? 147,000 subscribers. Um, and people are like, oh, I want to do that. But do they really?
Yeah,
One of the things before I get rid of this slide that I want to point out, and this is kind of why I love talking to you so much, is like you're an educator, and this video that's on the front of your YouTube channel is the new 2023 FHA guidelines. And you kind of do this annually. Once a
yeah,
year, you come out with FHA. This is a 90-minute video, Kyle.
yeah.
Dude, like, did you have a thermos of coffee next to you? This is a 90-minute video with what, about 300,000 views in less than 60 days?
I think at the end of the year, my editor usually sends me like a compilation of all the times midway through videos where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm tired.
I would have to take a nap like 25 minutes in, because you're going over guidelines. You're breaking things down. You're showing people your iPad. You're like, what I loved about it is, I think you said in the beginning of this that by the end of this, you'll probably know more than most loan officers
Mhm.
about the FHA loan. And just,
Yeah,
yeah, for anybody out there that doesn't know you, would you mind giving us a real brief kind of when you got started and kind of how long it took you and sort of what your journey was just getting onto YouTube?
sure. Yeah, so I started as a loan officer a few years ago, and I honestly feel like since the pandemic, time feels weird. But
Yeah.
probably about 5 years ago, I was started as a loan officer and was a loan officer for about actually just about 2 years, and was kind of frankly getting tired of answering the same questions over and over again, even in that short period of time. I was like, this seems like it's not efficient answering what's an appraisal for like the 100th time. So I kind of got to the point where I was like, what if I recorded a video about like how does an appraisal work? Then when somebody asks me the question, I'll send it to them. And so then what I would start doing is I would send them the video when they had the question and say, uh, watch this. And then when you have when you do have a question on top of it, then let's talk. Because I want to spend our time together actually being strategic, not just giving you like general info that you don't really need me on the phone for. So I really just was making a library of content for my clients. And feel like I stumbled into YouTube as a platform. I was really using it as just a library, like a place to host all my videos to send to my clients, to send to
So
my
you can
referral
easily
partners, to say
share a
like,
link, right?
yeah, because I was like 22 at the time, so I was like, I know what I'm doing. Like, here's a bunch of videos, which I did. I didn't. So from there, yeah, those videos just started gaining traction. They would get more views, and as I made, I think somewhere around like 50-ish videos was when I really started seeing some like more views come in. I was like, oh, like
Mm.
people are contacting me from this. Um, and at that time, I only had a license in Ohio, so it was kind of like, this isn't that big of a deal. Um,
But
But
that kind of is one of the things that I might have to stop you a couple of times because
mhm,
there's some important kind of milestones in here.
yeah,
First of all, you hit on perhaps my favorite saying in the whole world, which is there are not 10,000 questions about qualifying for a mortgage. There are 10 questions asked 10,000 ways.
yes,
And
yeah,
and your path is so similar to mine. So when you say you started getting responses, you're an originator in Ohio. YouTube's only in Ohio, right?
yeah, yeah. I think YouTube came the last to Ohio.
Ohio was last. That was the
Yeah,
last stop. So people were really
yeah. They're
excited
like, I
about
guess
it.
we have to give it to them.
But was that kind of your first encounter with and I don't know if people can relate to this, but as you're saying this, like I'm reliving my journey. Like, was that kind of your first experience with, first of all, there's no geographic boundaries on these
Mhm.
platforms. So, oh my gosh, what do I do? And second of all, man, there's a lot of people out there that have the same questions that aren't getting answered.
Yes. Yeah, it is amazing, like, the amount of people who will ask questions too, where they're like, "Hey," even if they're in contract, which is like, to me, it's like
Yes.
building the whole thing is like, I can't be, "Oh, well, if you're in contract, I don't have any time for you." It's
Yep.
gotta be like, "I'm here to help you through all stages, and I would also love to work with people who don't already have a loan officer or if they want a second opinion." But it's interesting the amount of people who like they're really afraid to ask questions to anybody they're working with, even if it's just a
Yeah.
realtor.
Yeah.
There's this fear that if they ask questions, that they're going to give up some control in the process, and that's where YouTube comes in really in an interesting way, where people get to self-serve the education that they get in a way where they have ownership of the process. And I think a lot of what I have been trying to push into, and what I think content does a really good job at, is respecting, or at least it should be doing a good job at, is respecting the viewer and their journey through it, and even understanding like the implications of information for them. Like, information is a lot of power and control that people feel when they're going through the transaction. And by making content, we get to empower our viewers to become better buyers, to become smarter sellers. And I think it's just a really unique position that content can allow. And it really opens up conversations where it's just so funny to me where people ask me like real estate questions about, Phoenix or something. I'm like, you should ask your realtor. why, why are you asking some guy on YouTube?
Yeah, I found myself doing that a lot well, did you ask your loan officer this question and what did they say?
Yeah.
I run into that a lot. That, another thing that I discovered early, Kyle, was that for every consumer that asks a question, it's representative of an exponentially larger number of consumers that have the same question, but they won't
Yeah.
ask.
Yes.
Right. So the very fact that one person answers that almost reveals a significant um, area of concern. Like if one consumer is asking this question, it's highly unlikely they're the only human being on the planet that encountered
Yeah.
that particular challenge. So what I found myself doing is being able to, just when having a conversation with the consumer on the phone, like you said, one of those 10 questions asked 10,000 ways, you could do a video about that question and it would address many people's
Mhm.
concerns. And I
Yeah.
and I knew that because one person asked. And the likelihood of that person finding you, right? Like they
Yeah.
run into the question, they go. So, okay, so about 4 or 5 years ago, you started this. Now, when you first started doing the videos, like you said, you were just doing a video to send to, like, was it around a specific product or was there something you were focusing on? I know today you focus a lot on first time buyers and you have
Mhm.
a passion for educating uh, young first time buyers.
Yeah, I feel like the videos I first was doing were more like, what is an appraisal? What does escrow
Okay.
mean? How do I figure out my payment? Those like really top level home buying questions that you get over and over and over again. Um, was primarily what I was making at that point.
What was the question or the series of questions that made you sit down and say, okay, I have to take some time and unpack this? Like, when was your first long form? You
Yeah.
decided this is the way I need to go with this.
Honestly, I can't exactly remember. I know, I feel like the biggest video that I started out with was like the FHA loan requirements.
Oh,
And
okay.
because I basically like always have a list of video ideas, and at all times has like 300 ideas on it. So I never run out, but it's also a little overwhelming. But at that time, I remember thinking like it'd probably be good for me to just go through like these different types of loans. So I wrote down like FHA loan requirements, and I'm kind of sitting there thinking like, no one's going to watch this. Is super boring. Who wants to watch any video, even if it's 8 minutes about FHA loans? And even a loan officer in our company was like, why are you making, no one wants to watch these. And
Would
that,
you
I feel
say
like
eight
that,
minutes?
yeah, I feel like that like lit something in me where I was like, okay, we'll see. So I made the first video, and I think, I'm trying to remember, I think the first one I did was maybe around like 10 or 15 minutes, and it got pretty good traction compared to the other videos that I made, which was surprising because I was like, who cares about this? I was happy
Right.
making a video that was just like solving somebody's maybe a small amount of people's problem, and didn't think it would get any reach. And then the next year, I was like, I think I'm going to revisit that, and because F8, unfortunately, guidelines change like weekly, so I was like, what if I compile everything that's new for this year and make it as an update? And I made it longer. I think the next one was like 30 minutes. And all of a sudden that like skyrocketed in views. And
Is
then
that the one that has over 1 million now?
I think it's the one that I did the year after,
Okay. One of them,
which,
one of the FHAs has over 1 million views.
yeah, it's around an hour long, and it has 1 million views. And it's the most
Wow.
popular video. And what's really interesting is what I feel like I've been discovering is people really like they like a full guide. Rather than just getting like little snippets about stuff. It's like,
Mm.
take me through the whole deal. Give me the whole thing. I don't want to know compartmentalized information that I have to piece together. Because for a buyer, I think that's what a lot of buyers feel is they're like, I'm learning about this, and then there's this thing, and that thing's over here. And they have the responsibility of trying to piece, how does that work for me? Versus if I can give you start to finish, I'm going to give you every single thing you need to know about this loan, and probably more than a lot of loan officers. You might invest an hour of your time in this, but I promise you'll know exactly if this works or not for you at the end. Same thing with conventional loans, or I'll just do that with other parts of the process, where it's like, here's just how buying works, and go through an hour long of like everything that you need to consider.
How big of an impact did creating these videos make on your experience and knowledge as a loan officer? Like,
Oh, like tremendously helpful. Because especially in the beginning when you're starting out, it's like I feel like it's really bad. It's a bad business practice. I would hate if another business did this, where like the only time they learn things is when their client is on the line.
yeah.
Like, it's a bad business when they're like,
And it's a
"Oh, that's new."
snowflake. It's totally different every single call.
Right, right. And it's like, that sounds really bad as a business practice. So making those videos was really helpful in being able to recognize like, oh, there's all these unique situations that I hadn't run into at that point. And then when I do run into them, I'm like, oh, sweet, I already kind of know the ins and outs of this. And similar to you, Scott, we're like, you and I both have a weird fetish for guidelines that we probably need to address in some sort of like therapy a point.
We have
Um,
a support group of 2 right now.
yeah. And so, when you go through it, it's to me, it's really interesting to be able to take these complex things that have all these little nuances, and how can we communicate that in a way where it really covers 80% of what somebody needs to know. And we're also understanding the nuances of like, when you explain to somebody how, if they're going to buy a multifamily home with an FHA loan, how can I, in the most concise way, explain the top level things they need to know without going too deep into the weeds of things that it's like not necessary for the client. So it's this interesting mix of how do I empower you with as much information as is helpful versus overwhelming you and trying to make it seem like you need me to clarify everything for you.
One of the things that I try to tell my audience over and over again is that when you're creating content like this, uh, there's a strange dynamic here because we think of it as a one-to-many medium, because it's like it's YouTube. You have 100,000 subscribers, but you're really only talking to one person at a time, because there's only one person viewing that video at a time. So you're really just having a conversation with that one person.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of that is that we don't have to solve that one person's problem necessarily. We are just showing them that we are a problem solver. And every single video on your channel is you being a problem solver. And this goes back down to, there aren't 10,000 questions. They're like, yeah, Kyle, well, I watched your 90-minute video and my situation is almost like that, except, and then there really is no except, but everybody feels like there's an except. And something really, really interesting about the way that you approached this, which was very, very similar to the reason and the way that I got approached it, is like, you didn't think, oh, this is going to be a great way for me to get a ton of leads. Like, it was a tool that you used to communicate, but your heart is really in helping people and helping empower them by educating them so that they can make informed decisions. And I just think that's, it's a mindset that I think is so important, because
if I can touch on that for just a second,
please do.
One of the things that I've mentioned, or not mentioned, that I've seen with content, and like, also just a quick side note, I don't want to fall into the trap of like, anytime you do something that other people are like, oh, I want to figure out how to do that. I feel like a lot of people can pitch it as like, this is the only way to make content. And I only know what has worked for me. Plenty of different things work for other people. But what I've noticed is I feel like a lot of people teach about content, or I see content where they almost think that the buyer or the person watching it is dumb, or they treat them like they don't care. And so like, I see a lot of people talking about content where they're like, it should be fast and quick. It's like FHA guidelines. No one will understand. Why would you do something like, why would you make a video about FHA guidelines? They don't care. They don't understand. They don't want to see it. And what I found is the opposite, is like, talk to make videos like you would be talking to almost like another loan officer. Like, people really want to be educated. They want to feel empowered. They want to understand what's going on behind the curtain. Like, don't think that you have to like dumb down content to the point where like your viewers aren't dumb. But I see so many people create content or teach about creating content as if like viewers don't have an attention span and don't care and are disinterested, and I just have to try to like convert them into a lead, is how I see a lot of content being made. And I feel like that's what has worked really well for me, is like, I view every person who watches my video as somebody who is going to completely understand what's happening and who wants to take ownership of it. And for those people who don't, they're probably going to skip my videos and watch something else, and that's perfectly fine. But I feel like that's just the big like ethos that I've been carrying, is like, the people I want to work with are people who care and are involved in the process, and they want to understand. And I want to be able to be there, like walk alongside with them through the information, as opposed to being like at the top, I know all the information and you have to come through me to get the thing. It's just this different like switch in content.
Well, it's a switch in content, and it's a switch in perspective. That the perspective that you take is really a servant leader mentality. It's a really, I have this information, it can help people, I'm going to share it with everybody. I'm not going to hide it. We kind of had this conversation a little bit when we were talking about shorts. You and I are both short adverse, and it's not that we can't do it and won't do it. It's just, it feels clickbaity to me. I mean, I know YouTube has an algorithm and they're trying to juice certain, engagement and activity, but I mean, it's hard for me to turn on the camera without going off for like 25 minutes, 20 or 25 minutes on a topic, because there really is that much to talk about. Like I don't know, I do my videos as though the person listening is as geeky as me and as interested in the detail as I am. Well, you
Yeah.
know what?
Yeah.
I do videos the way that interests me. And I think that's what you did. You did videos the way that interests you, the way
Absolutely.
that you learned and the way that you like to teach. And that turned you into a lighthouse. And that lighthouse just attracted everybody. So the only people that reach out to you, like you said, you don't hear from, you don't, people don't call you if they think your video's dumb. They might troll your comment thread, but they're not going to
Yeah.
like reach out to you and call you and tell you you're dumb. Most likely they're just not going to listen to your video.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing about, there's a little bit of that, like, I don't know if that's technically like the law of attraction thing, but there's an attraction thing with content where it's like you're going to attract the people who like your content, which sounds very basic, but
Yeah.
it's like, well, then keep in mind the content that you're making. If you're making content that is very like negative or is like on the maybe clickbaity-ish side, like you're going to get people who are attracted to that. And that's the interesting thing is like, we have a team of loan officers and they're always like talking to people who see our YouTube videos is like amazing. Like they know all of the stuff. We're not sitting there like, here's how the loan works and here's, the different down payments. They're like, yeah, I got it. I just need help with my situation and getting, moving forward with it. So that's always really exciting to see, like people who are like, they're excited. They know what's going on. And I think some loan officers are like afraid of the client knowing things. Like, oh, what if the client has information? Like, where do I fit into that? And like Scott, you and I have talked about this a lot, because we cover a lot of like guidelines and programs. Like your value is not in your ability to regurgitate a PDF, like the FHA handbook or the Fannie guidelines. Like that's not your value as a loan officer. It's like to help people feel understood, to help them navigate the process, to work through when they have those unique situations. If you don't have the solution in the top of your head, you know how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And that's really what the value is that I think we provide as loan officers.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I try to cover, discuss when I'm doing my videos is just, everybody's situation is a little bit different. And I may not be able to answer your exact question, but I want you to understand that there are complexities and your options are many times limited to the experience or the effort of the person that you end up with, right?
Mhm.
So if you go online and you fill out a form, if they don't feel like looking up the variable income guidelines for Freddie Mac, you're not going to get those. You're not going to get that answer to your question if you don't qualify for variable income guidelines for Fannie Mae.
Yeah.
So like I always try to leave more questions than I answer. I'm like, here, I'm going to address this, but I want to open this world up to you. Loans aren't commodities. They're unique to your situation and you're unique to everyone else. They're not
Yeah.
complicated. They're not difficult, but there can be complexities for some people. And, in the business models of the online lenders, simply don't support the hiring of very experienced loan officers that are paid to put in that effort. They're skimmers.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get the easy stuff. But that, quite frankly, leaves tens or hundreds of thousands of consumers every day, every week, every month going back online, typing in a little bit more detailed question and they're finding you anyhow because you just gotta pop up. But the more detail that they type, then they're finding, and they find somebody like you and they're like, okay, that's a completely different experience. And like you said, they already know, like, and trust you. You did something else that was interesting. You don't have lead forms anymore, right?
No.
But you did for a really long time, and I actually mimic your lead forms. I like them. Your lead forms weren't they were so much different from something from a Rocket or a Bankrate or something like that, which are just your
Yeah.
traditional forms. And those things work. I'm not saying that they don't, but that may have been the experience they had before they went to you. So your original form, the one that I still use, is, hey, what's your biggest question or concern about qualifying for a mortgage? It was an
Yeah.
open-ended question. And I get the most fascinating stories. They're not
Yeah.
leads, they're like stories, and they tell you everything, but you've even
Yeah.
evolved beyond that.
Yeah, so it is interesting. Like everyone's used to like this typical lead form, and I know for myself, and maybe it's just because I'm in the internet marketing world a lot, and I'm Scott, you are too. It's like I know when I'm a lead, and I feel like I'm like cattle, and they're like, all right,
Yep.
get in the gate, and it just feels really gross. I know as just a user when I go and sign up for something, and it's like, okay, name, email, all right, cool. But then when we just start getting the like uh, income, credit score, how much you're looking at buying, what ends up happening is to the client that actually doesn't serve them. We're asking
Right.
information, and who is it serving? It's serving the loan officer,
Yes.
and maybe whoever's watching this, your company operates different. You operate different. You may be the exception. But what most loan officers do is that lead comes in and they're like, oh, it's a 580 credit score and it's a $180,000 house, and they're like, I'll talk to them later. And like, if that's the way you run your business, fine. That's just not what I care about creating in the world. And so it just felt kind of crummy where it's like, we're already applying like an objective label to this person before I even got a chance to talk to them, or before we could even like answer some questions and help. Because I operate, and Scott, you do as well. It's like the whole premise of this second opinion channel is like the whole goal is not to just move fast, work with one lender that only does clean loans and push them through. It's like there's a lot of business left on the table.
Oh,
If
so much.
if we just if we just widen the box a little bit. So going back to lead form, I kind of was like, I think these questions are pointless. We don't do anything with them
Right.
other than allow the loan officer to see them, to prejudge the client before we have the conversation. I was
Yes.
like, what if we just shorten it and just say, we need your contact information, but also like, how, tell me about your experience. Like, I think one of the forums I had too was like, what's your biggest fear? Because like everyone is walking into the buying process or mortgage process with a little bit of hesitancy. Like, let's talk about it. Bring it up. I want to talk about your hesitancy, because like I don't want clients to feel like we're trying to get their objections. We have a perfect reply to it. Like, I want you to know that I understand. I bought a house even after working in the mortgage world for a while. Like, that also is an overwhelming process. It can be a little bit terrifying to go through.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I've seen
so
more loan officers get amnesia when they start their own loan than it's the funniest thing I've ever seen in the world.
yeah,
You have a loan officer been around for 10 years. They start buying a house. They have amnesia. They have no idea how anything works. Do you think that'll
yeah.
get approved? Do you think that'll be okay?
I did
That's
the
best.
same. It's the same thing whenever I've done like a loan for like a realtor I've worked with,
Yes.
and
Yes.
they're like
Yes.
freaking out. I'm like, anytime we've had a client like this, you're the one who's like, it's not a big deal. So, uh, yeah. And so then we've recently changed what we do now to Calendly, which is like a calendar booking thing. So
Yeah.
we put our loan officers, all their calendars are in it. So clients can directly schedule a call. And that's been working really well for us. The main reason why we did it is like, I'm sure we would get more leads if it was just a form fill. But obviously those leads have to be followed up with. But I feel like it eliminates a little bit of the process of like, normally you get a form or you get a lead form come in, and then there's this gap between somebody's going to contact them, and it's all to schedule a call usually.
Yes.
So it's like, let's just let them schedule a call. Like, just get it right on our calendar. And we found that just has a much higher conversion rate than us just going with the lead form. And we're getting people who are a lot more serious about, like, they actually want to talk to us, as opposed to just filling out something and then maybe backing out later.
So I attribute that. I call that bridging the trust gap. And anytime you have marketing or advertising, there's the consumer has to have a certain level of trust to get them to the next step.
Mhm.
And you're right. Normally we would have that conversation, but what one of the kind of a metaphors I guess I use, or examples that I use, is that every time you create a piece of content, you're cloning yourself, and you're just
Mhm.
creating this army of clones that are out there having conversations with consumers 24/7. So the reason that they're willing to just complete a calendar is they feel like they just had a 90-minute conversation with you about FHA loans. The trust
Yeah.
is there. So, and that's usually, that they're like, okay, let's just do it. I, I think that would be tough to do on the other side of like a cold Facebook campaign. Like
Yeah.
the only call to action is, hey, or say, schedule a Calendly link or a calendar link. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that.
For
So that's
cold
pretty
traffic, and
interesting.
this is something I've been wanting to kind of play around with,
Yep.
is I would even look at tools like Video Ask, where Video Ask is like it's just a
Yep.
video, but it's kind of a self-guided. It's almost like a choose your own adventure video. So
Yeah.
basically, you could make a form where it's like, hey, I'm going to tell you about process or what we do or whatever your pitch is, and then they get to choose like A or B. Do I want to learn more about purchases or refinances, and let them kind of you get to have those beginning conversations about this is who we are, build some of that trust on video, and then move them into like a calendar call after that. Because otherwise you're trying to build trust through like missed calls and email drips, and that probably is effective for a lot of companies, but it's also so much work
Yeah.
to follow up with clients who are like, are you ready yet? And if not, that's okay. But like, we want to have the conversation to make sure that we have the right game plan for you in the next 6 months, if that's where you're at.
And so the other thing I want to kind of talk about is you moving into a rainmaker type of position, because I,
Hmm.
I think that's something very, very seriously that a bunch of you old dogs. I mean, Kyle's not an old dog yet, but he's got an old dog soul. Um, but like some of us, been in the business a couple of decades, and we have a team, and it's a tough market, and not everybody out there can go out and get business. Um, and it took you a while to get to this position, but we kind of mentioned this before. YouTube is Ohio was the last place that got YouTube. So all these inquiries that you're getting are all over the place. You ended up moving. Our relationship was you were, some of your traffic in areas where you weren't licensed were going to the Find My Way Home expert network, and we
Hmm.
were following up on the stuff you couldn't. But then you ended up finding a place that had an FDIC license, so that you had all 50 states, so you could kind of feed them. You could have more control over the follow up and
Yeah.
and the conversion on those things, right?
Yeah. Yes, because it's a whole different beast. I feel like when you're starting to work in all these different states, and then you just have like an influx of clients coming in. It's like, most of my time right now is spent on like our actual like basically marketing to sales operations. Is how do we go from like, obviously they see stuff on YouTube and my website, but then how do we actually get them connected and transfer that over to a loan officer and get them through the process? It's a very different beast than just like working as a loan officer, because I don't directly originate right now. My team does, and so I just focus on the education for our clients, and then a lot of our marketing and sales systems that I'm working on building right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's where, I talk to a lot of people, and, we can only take so many big ups and downs. And I know those of us that went through the '08 crash, like this is not the same, but emotionally it's hard to have another punch in
Mhm.
the gut that hard,
Yeah.
after 15 years of okay, I finally recovered, I finally got my legs underneath me. So there's a lot of guys out there that are guys, gals, loan officers, experienced people that have all of this experience, and nobody knows about it.
Mhm.
And I've been digging really deep into the mostly the Chat GPT platform, but really the natural language AI models. And on the Google website, they have an example of what Bard is going to look like. And natural language AI is going to completely change the way consumers search for information. And when Bard opens, you're going to type in a question on Bard. It's going to give you the natural language answer first and push down all of the search engine results. So SERPs, the new search engine results, is now page 2. So page 1 is going to be that natural language response. And I was doing I did a video yesterday on reputation management, and more important than ever, it's important to have content out there that's indexable by these search engines so that they have the data to be able to give a natural language response. I
Yeah.
talked to some friends that are just on social, and you ask it who you are or what you do, and it doesn't really know. It's not accurate. But when I
Yeah.
did it for me, because I've been publishing content and writing for industry magazines and stuff, it was really, really good. Like, it knew it and it had it handled. And it kind of just got me thinking how important, I started beating this, you got a blog drum, in 2010 is kind of where everybody was doing it. But I'm telling you, if you start creating this content now, it's not too late.
Right.
This is kind of the time where everybody has a little bit of extra time. And if any of this stuff that we're talking about is resonating with you, if you're like, yeah, that's how I run my business, it's not easy. So we didn't really talk about the timeline. So uh, how long did it take you to start getting those really starting to see? I think you said it was about 50 videos,
Yeah.
but I think how long did it take you to get 100 subscribers?
Oh my gosh. I used to have a chart of this. It was like close to a year. Now, that's with like, I may have posted a handful of videos. I think it wasn't until maybe 8 or so months in where I was like, I need to like fully dive into it.
I'm gonna
Uh,
actually do this.
yeah. And then at that point, I started doing like, I did about a video almost every weekday. And then I think in like 6 months, got around 1,000 subscribers. In that point, I was
Wow.
just like, I'm just
Doing
gonna,
five a week.
yeah. And really, it's when people hear that, it's not that creating more content is going to get you more subscribers necessarily, because it doesn't really work like that. It can, but it's not. It's not like a one-to-one thing. For me, I followed a guy named Miles Beckler, and he's very big in the internet content space. And his whole thing was like, make videos for the only purpose of proving to yourself that you can create content. Like, the
Mhm.
whole goal is to practice being a content creator.
Yep.
So before I can prove to myself that I can help somebody on the internet with a mortgage, I need to prove to myself that I show up and make content. So really, the only point of making videos for me was moving from, I think I'm going to dabble. It's when you tell your friends like, I think I'm going to make a YouTube channel, going from that to like, I make YouTube videos is the
Mhm.
switch that you need to make. And that's going to take you making videos consistently. And we're talking like, let's get to 50 before we start to like circle back and say, what's working, what's not working, and what do I want
I
to
love
change?
that.
Because my dad started a YouTube channel as well. And he's, after he made like 10 videos, he was kind of joking, but he was like, where's everybody at? I was like, well, let me know when you're at like 50, and then we can actually like, strategize. But there's no point of going through strategy and trying to get all of your lighting perfect and the whole deal until you've proven that you actually make content.
I,
Otherwise, it's
I think
irrelevant.
100 is another good milestone. 100 kind of feels like if you get to 100, you're you're starting to see the organic inbound that's not
Absolutely.
expected, right? Like, it's happening. When we talk about 50, that's when you can look back and you can say, oh wow, that's interesting, those 2 or 3 people found my channel, and that's really cool. But you don't have those endorphin laced feedback loops
Yeah.
like you have with likes and shares and stuff on social. But it's
Yeah.
just such a better foundation to build for your
Yeah.
brand.
Well, and when people hear
For
that too, like I know it's like, well, I haven't even made one video, so 50 sounds like insane. And the problem is like you're overthinking it like
Yeah.
a lot. If you look at the first videos I made, I like had a notebook that it was like $3 from Walmart. I would sketch out like a couple bullet points, and I talked to the camera, I looked at my notes, talked to the camera, looked at my notes, and I recorded on an iPhone. And so like it's kind of the whole idea of like Parkinson's law. It's like, Scott, if I ask you to do something and I say I need you to do that within 3 hours, you're probably going to deliver it to me like at the 250 mark. Uh, but versus, and if I say like I need this thing in a week, you're probably going to give it to me at like day 6 or day 7. And that's not on you. It's just like human nature.
Yeah.
And so if I'm telling myself eventually I'll make a video, well, eventually lasts forever, and I'm probably not going to start, because eventually also works for tomorrow and eventually includes the day after. But if I tell myself I have to make a video by 5 p.m. tonight, make whatever video I can create within publishing by 5 p.m. tonight. And that's what I did in the beginning. Was I just need to publish. That's all I'm proving to myself, is I can make the video. I don't care if it's good. It's going to grow over time. It's going to get better over time. And that's each video just gets slightly better, and changes the format.
I have a very specific term for that. I call it pushing through the suck, because you're going to suck and you just got to push through it and get through it.
Yeah.
Nobody can avoid that particular stage of content creation. You have to push through the suck. It just is. And it's like, and it's not that anybody else thinks it sucks. They don't. They're impressed that you're even on video. It's just this mental hurdle that we have, that we hate to look at ourselves, and you're always going to see something that you don't like and something that you want to improve on. And that's part of the process.
Yeah. The beautiful thing too about it is no one's going to watch your video in the beginning.
Right, that's right. That's right too. Yeah.
No one's going to see it.
Your mom already loves you. Don't worry about it. She's not going to give you negative feedback, because she's the only one watching that video. Oh man. All right. Dude, this has been really, really good. What's your best advice? Because I mean, I talk to a lot of people, and I talk to a lot of people about video. That's what we do as our business, is we help people get published on their YouTube channel. We help them build their YouTube channel. They still have to do the video. They have to show up for the video call.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what's your best advice for people out there? Because there's a lot of originators struggling, and they're worrying about where their next loan is coming from. And it seems like, well, if I'm not going to get a lead right away from doing video, like what kind of advice would you give to somebody that has that thought, but they're like, but Kyle, I need a loan today?
Yeah. Well, what's the way that I started before I started doing YouTube is I did tons of personal video. So at that time I used BombBomb, and I did probably about 1,000 BombBombs before I started doing YouTube. And it would be it's a great practice to be on video without it being like public. You're sending it to John Smith and his wife, or like it, or
Who are you sending him to?
Yeah. So I got to the point where like every client would get about 3 BombBombs. So I would do usually one for their pre-approval, which once I started doing video pre-approvals, like shopping went like down like crazy. I used to be able to it was like every other loan, someone's shopping. And then with video, it was like, I maybe got shopped 3 times. Because what would end up happening is I would do a pre-approval and say, like, hey, Scott, congratulations. I went through your application. We're able to get you approved for 400,000. I'm going to go ahead and pull up this quote and walk through it with you. So here's 2 options for you. You mentioned you want to put a little bit, as little as down as possible. So we can do 3% down here. If you do 5%, it's going to have a slightly lower rate. Here's the impact of that over time. Over 10 years, that would save you, $23,000. I'm making up numbers.
You just did like a screenshot of your did you use a mortgage coach, or did you just were showing the LOS numbers?
I'd play around with different ones. I used Mortgage Coach for a little bit. That honestly found that's a little confusing for clients. I also use like MBS Highway. I would do sometimes even just the straight quote.
But
If
you
I
do a
wasn't sharing
but
stuff.
you do a screen share with the bomb video up
Yep.
in
So it'd
the
have like my
or
face like
whatever.
right in the corner, and then
Yeah.
my screen share here, and just walking through that with them, because all of my competitors were just sending an email saying like, cool, here's your pre-approval. You got a, at that time, 3% rate. And versus me, I would explain the process and be like, there's a face to it. They know that they can ask me questions. So then I also copy the realtor in that as well. So now the realtor, that's a marketing tool that I use for realtors, is
Yeah.
because now the realtors on their own started pitching me as like, hey, if you work with Kyle, like he'll send you videos, custom videos through the process, and like you'll understand stuff. So they get a pre-approval one. They would also get a loan estimate one, because I honestly was like, I, when like you press send a loan estimate, and it's like I could almost accurately predict like 90% of the time, look at my phone within 20 minutes, I'm going to get a call, and they're doing like all this like math gymnastics and
Right.
adding all these random lines together. And they're like, you told me it was going to be 20,000
Yes.
and it's 100,000. And like, okay, hold up. And the trust already got eroded, and it's hard to build back.
Yes.
Like, no. Cause in their mind, I just did a bait and switch to them. I'm like, no, you're just looking at page 3 and we need page 2. So what I would do is same thing. I'd send the loan estimate video before I sent them the loan estimate. So I'd say, hey, you're about to get this document. It's going to come with a ton of other documents that you may have questions about. Feel free to ask. But I want to walk you through. Here's your payment. Here's your loan amount, your rate. Here's all the closing costs. Now, all these other things are estimated by other parties. They may be different. You're going to talk to your insurance agent. And, if you have a 15 Rottweilers I don't know about, it's probably going to be higher than I estimated.
Right.
And then the final thing I would do with conditions, is we get a conditional approval back. And again, all these things are being sent to the realtor as well. They're copied in there.
Nice. Now,
so-
are you sending it to both realtors? Or are you sending it to the listing agent and the buyer's agent?
No, I don't send it to the listing agent, because that would be a privacy issue and kind of expose too much of the
Yeah.
buyer's
No, that's correct. I
process.
guess that's
But
right.
what I would do for a lot of listing agents is I would get in the habit of sending them a video as well. And it would just be a short, I didn't screen share, but it'd be like, hey, Scott, just want to let you know I'm the loan officer on this deal. My email's here, my phone number's here. Feel free to text me if you have questions. I'll be updating you through the process, like super quick like that. Just so that it's like, they're used to having a loan officer who never picks up the phone, and they don't even know who I am, and I send them a video.
Yeah.
And so it builds a lot more trust and the ability to actually work with those agents in the future.
Dude, that is such absolute gold. I mean, that really is. I mean, I push, get on YouTube, turn them in a blog post, get found. But man, that's the lowest hanging fruit that you can do to just significantly improve. Not only is it improving your relationships, but it's also increasing your repeat and your referral business because of the depth of the relationship that you're building during the transaction. And like you said, your relationship with the buyer's agents is beyond a transactional relationship. It's a communication relationship.
Yeah.
So if something happens to go wrong with the loan, you're communicating it right away, and you're not blamed for, you're not blamed because you're in front of it and you already have those communication channels.
I would get to the closing, and well, at least in Ohio, it used to be like the listing agent, the seller, the buyer, the buyer's agent, the title agent. And so I'd be there, and the title agent would like ask, like, have you seen the numbers and everything? And like the client would like pitch me at them, be like, yeah, send me a video and walk through the whole thing. And they're like, we know everything. But what's also great too in it is like, I think sometimes people hear video and they're like, oh, it's work. It's going to be more time. I can't add that into my schedule. It actually will save you a lot of time. Because like, think of the pre-approval, for instance. How many pre-approvals and quotes do you send out? And then someone went with another lender. Well, if you could reduce the churn rate of somebody working with another lender, that 5-minute video saved you probably an hour's worth of time.
Yes.
Same thing with that loan estimate. How many times have you, you send a loan estimate, the client calls you, or you call them to review it, and all of a sudden that's a 30-minute phone call, or maybe it's an hour-long phone call. Well, I can actually do more work in 5 minutes recording a video and eliminate the phone call.
Well, it's
Same
because
with
you're
position.
taking control of the time. If the consumer calls you, you have to stop whatever you are doing or postpone
Yep.
whatever you are doing and squeeze them in, and that creates a backlog. So it's a really smart time management strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, because like 30 minutes, it's either 30 minutes on the phone or 5 minutes on a video. I'm gonna take 5 minutes all day, and it's asynchronous. Like you
Is
mentioned,
that
I
a
don't have to
trick
stop.
question?
Yeah, I don't have to stop another file, and it's uh, really. So back to your point where you're like, I need a loan today. Um, I I would get, before I started doing video, my business was just kind of like inching along. It's like I'm no different than anybody else. But starting to do video was where people were like, oh, he's like very serious about this. Like, and I would actually have realtors who were like, oh, sweet, here's my good clients, not the clients who like
Wow.
were like, hey, I just filed for bankruptcy and I have no money
Everybody
to get a
else
loan.
turned them down. See, is
Right.
there anything you can do?
Yeah, yeah, like, I send this to 15 loan officers, maybe you can do it, and if you don't, then I'm gonna just blame it on you. Like,
Yeah, you're gonna stay 15th on my list.
right, right.
Oh man. So okay, that's really, really good advice. And if people are like, if they do want to start, if they're like, I'm gonna start doing this, I'm gonna start doing my YouTube videos. Um, do you recommend starting off like rapid fire, doing five a week for the first 90 days or something to try to establish that habit? But in reality, to get results, you don't have to post a video every day.
Correct.
The YouTube algorithms are more comfortable with 1 to 2 long form videos a
Absolutely.
week.
Absolutely. YouTube does not care about what time you post, how many times you post, how many videos. Irrelevant. YouTube does not care. And the people who are still shilling that information are charging like $5,000 for their course.
Wow.
Like I have a YouTube rep, who like a employee who works at YouTube who I work with. So like this is from YouTube itself. YouTube does not care. But what does matter is you being a better educator, you being a better communicator is only going to work if you practice communicating.
Yes.
And the best way to practice communicating is by communicating and actually doing it, instead of like fabricating the best strategy to come up with, so that maybe you'll post one video and you expect views from it. It's just not going to work. And part of it too is like, uh, I think from a long-term play, you need to figure out what is, how do you authentically show up? And I know that kind of sounds a little like, internal, like just give me the tools and tactics. But really, the best tactic is to be authentic, because
Yeah.
think of the people that you work with. You work with people where like, even though we think we're logical people, we work with people because in our gut it feels good. We're like, all the right check boxes are
Yeah.
happening, um, and it makes sense to work with you. And when you really hone in on like who you are, what you bring to the table, and how you can communicate that clearly to other people, is where things are really going to start working. Because even on YouTube, I was posting a lot of videos, and I would see like some good growth. And I took a course that a friend of mine had that was all about like being authentic in business and sales. And literally within a month, my videos, as I started doing that, went up like a little hockey stick, because I really started pushing into the fact that like I communicate information in a specific way, usually the way that I want to consume it. And I was like, I'm really going to deep dive into, like, for me, it was I feel like I'm pretty monotone. I don't do like skits. I don't have funny interjections. Um, I like explaining the things, like complex things in bullet points on a slide, walking through the whole thing A to Z, and then helping people understand some of the math behind it. Other people are really good at being personal and funny, being friendly. You really got to push into like, what is you?
Yeah.
And it takes, to develop that, you're not going to find that on video 1. You're going to find that on video 50. And it's going to get more clear on video 100. And it's going to get really solidified on video 200.
I absolutely love that. I have this different take on the law of attraction, or it's just a fold to law of attraction. And what I try to tell people is that when you are comfortable then the people watching you feel comfortable,
Yeah.
and that attracts them to you. So there's the law of attraction. You put stuff out there, but the law of attraction really is you have to be attractive, and to be attractive, you have to be comfortable.
Yeah. Think
Because
how awkward a video would be if I started it. I was like, "What's up, guys?" Like, what?
well,
It doesn't fit.
yeah, and if you're just kind of stressed out and stuff, it's like that emotion comes through and people can feel your stress. The fact that you have this calm demeanor about you, it's like you watch it and you're instantly, all your stress is diffused, because you're like, okay, this guy seems really comfortable in their skin. They must know what they're talking about. Well, brother, I swear we were going to keep this under an hour. We barely squeaked in there. For anybody that wants to see more of what Kyle's doing, Win the House You Love is the YouTube channel. And it's fantastic. Go through there. I mean, I don't think people are going to be inclined to copy you because you're just so unique in the way that you do your stuff. But what I want you to really take away from that is watch Kyle's videos and see if that's the same guy that you just heard on this podcast. And I think 100% you're going to say that's absolutely the same guy. And I assure you it's the same guy you would have a beer with if you went to Ohio. So I think that's super important. Folks, if you're watching this, I have links below. That's what we do, is we help you create the video. We're not going to give you the video topics, but we're going to help guide you on that and help you learn what to talk about. We use Mortgage Currency, Kyle. That is a gold mine.
I love it.
for content topics. And what we'll do is we're going to introduce.
Don't share it, Scott. It's my secret.
Well, we give it to free. We give a subscription to everybody who joins our network because we're huge fans of it. But there's links below if you want to get more information on how we can help you with that. Kyle, thank you so much. We'll let you get back to your mortgage conference there. Even though we're really, really appreciating the weird waffle background that you're
still not sure what this hotel wallpaper is. I haven't figured that out.
I'm not sure either, but this has been incredibly informative, and I really appreciate you sharing and being willing to do this and just share your experience with everybody. I think it's great.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Scott.
Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.